It's Wednesday time! Get all pumped up about why sugar sucks. How you guys doing today? Happy it's third time. This one's for Kyle O'Gara. Remember him today. So we'll talk about that at the end. So what I want to talk about today is sugar in the brain, right? Is it all good? Is it all bad? Is there something somewhere in between, right? Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll get to you in a minute here. So the brain itself uses half of all of our sugar in the body. The brain requires a lot of energy and it uses a ton of oxygen as well, as we know. And we can have problems with too little amounts of sugar or too much sugar, right? Or hyperglycemia, we could say. Too much blood sugar, or hypoglycemia, too little. So what happens if we have too little? Let's start there. Well, too little blood sugar can actually cause us to not be able to produce sufficient amounts of neurotransmitters. Those are our chemical messengers in the brains that travel between neurons, and so it's no surprise that with low blood sugar we get reduced communication between neurons, we get attention deficits and overall reduction in cognitive functioning, right? I'm sure you've been there where you're like, oh, my blood sugar is really low, I need to eat something, kind of wake my brain up. Now, this comes with a major caveat we'll talk about at the end, right? So, because your brain can function without sugar, okay? But again, we'll talk about that. So what happens if we have too much, right? We have too much blood sugar. Well, this is even worse than having too little, okay? So too much can cause a reduction in overall cognitive function. It can have adverse effects on memory formation, right? Both short and long term. It can actually shrink our brains. Too much blood sugar, too much sugar can shrink your freaking brain. It can make it smaller. Let that one stick, okay? Just like too much sugar causes beta amyloid plaques to get all sticky in the brain, which puts you at an increased risk for developing neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, right? Accelerates, does too much blood sugar, brain aging, and especially fructose. That's one form of sugar. And we generally talk about glucose when we talk about natural forms of sugar. But fructose especially has been shown, which you find in natural foods too, to accelerate brain aging. Okay, so aside from that, we get reduced connectivity between different brain regions. And if there's reduced connectivity, we can't have the proper functioning simultaneously or at least almost simultaneously, we could say, of different brain regions that are involved in some response, whether it be to remember something or, to verbalize something, right? Or to pay attention or to learn something, right? Or involved in executive function in the brain, right? Now, aside from that, too much blood sugar can cause damage to those small blood vessels that supply blood to the brain. And is that a good thing? It's a very bad thing. Obviously, our brain what do we get in the blood? We get oxygen and nutrition, right? And water. So, it's no surprise that vascular disease obviously would not bode well for cognitive functioning, right? And in fact, this small vessel disease can spur the development of things like vascular dementia, right? Not to mention putting you at a greater risk for developing strokes and things like that, right? So people with type 2 diabetes mellitus, right, they've abused the insulin response to glucose, right, which transports glucose to tissues to be uptaken and used for energy. And over time, like any machine, our body as a biological machine and our organ systems working as such will eventually fail, right? And people with type 2 diabetes mellitus, they have accelerated rates of brain aging, which is obviously no bueno. And reduced cognitive function. So what is something that we know helps to, reduce the negative effects of aging? Well, things like antioxidants, right? Like pterostilbene that we find in blueberries, for example, anthocyanins, polyphenols, these things we find in these colorful fruits and vegetables, for example, right? So interestingly, now all this information is out of Harvard, if you were curious, and they did a pilot study in Harvard where they used intranasal insulin, right? So INI, where they gave them insulin, through the nose, right? And insulin, like we said, helps your body to better absorb blood glucose, blood sugar, and to use it effectively. So what happened when they gave these people with type 2 diabetes mellitus this intranasal insulin? Well, it actually improved memory, it improved verbal learning, and improved spatial orientation. So there is hope, for recovery. And that was a pilot study. They're talking about intranasal insulin for people with type 2 diabetes mellitus for improving cognitive function overall. We just set a few parameters, in which that was proven to happen. And again, it's human clinical trials, right? It's more valuable than, say, rat studies or mice studies or something like that. Not to say that is our first line of treatment for people with type 2 diabetes. What might be a good thing for people with type 2 diabetes to do? To start the intermittent fasting. Because what is one thing that intermittent fasting does? Well, it improves insulin sensitivity. And we have insulin resistance in people with type 2 diabetes. It's different than type 1. Type 2 is from lifestyle, right? There are some genetic components, but it's majorly environment, majorly lifestyle, whereas type 1 is that autoimmune attack on the beta cells and the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas that produce insulin, and so we're not quite producing enough, right? And they also attack intermediates and pathways within the beta cells. We did a whole video on that and One Wellness. But what I want to get back to, what we said we would do in the beginning, is talk about why too much blood sugar is worse for your brain than having too little. Even though too little, like we said, reduces communication between neurons as you can't quite produce all those neurotransmitters, maybe, right? Reducing attention, overall cognitive function. Well, because over time, if you're, say, fasting, for example, or on the topic, and you have really low levels of blood sugar, well, your body is extremely adaptive, and so it has to do something about that to still be able to think. So what does it do? It goes through something called intermetabolic switching. So intermetabolic switching. When we talk about metabolism, energy sources, there are typically two. We talk about amino acids are generally last, unless it's not in the presence of oxygen, and then it goes sugar, amino acids, and then fat. You need oxygen to burn fat, right? We talked about all that. We'll do another day to that. But this intermetabolic switching is when it moves from being glucogenic to ketogenic. In other words, moves from breaking down glucose or sugar to breaking down fat as its energy source in order to be able to think. The brain doesn't want to have to do this, right? Because this is an energy expensive process. And, albeit we get 9 kilocalories per gram when we break down fat as opposed to 4 for glucose or for amino acids, therefore 2. It takes a lot more effort, right? So the body is naturally lazy. It wants to just flow towards equilibrium. It doesn't care about a six-pack unless it increases your chances for mating, or the size of your beard. We're talking things like secondary sexual characteristics, right? Things not directly involved in mating. It's different than like penile size, right, for example, or testicular size, right? But the brain is very adaptive. So if you do get to the point where you have low blood sugar, a lot of us will feel that brain fog if we're used to having sugar all the time. But I can attest to the fact that if you get used to intermittent fasting, this almost turned into a fasting video, then you get this sense of mental clarity, nirvana, acuity. You feel very sharp after a certain number of hours in fasting. It's very interesting because it doesn't happen at first. When you first start fasting, you're like, oh my God, I need food. I couldn't go to the gym right now. I got no energy. I can't think right now. I got no sugar. I need some sugar. But over time, again, your body being so adaptive, it learns to use the fat. and use ketone bodies as a byproduct of beta oxidation or fat breakdown that occurs in the mitochondria, the energy powerhouses of our cells, and requires oxygen as a fuel source. So you actually, over time, you can feel great with really low amounts of sugar. Okay. So what are a few other things that happen if we don't eat for a long time? Well, we can boost growth hormone, right? We get into ketosis. You know, the preliminary stages begin around 12 hours into the fast. You see that hot spot, that exponential increase in fat burning anywhere from 18 to 24 hours into the fast typically, but we don't recommend that for premenopausal women because it can have adverse effects. Shut up! It can have adverse effects, can fasting for too long, on their release of hormones or their fertility, right? Things like that. So it's very serious. You know, if women fast more than 18 hours, it's generally not a good thing. Shut up! Generally not a good thing, right? So that's just, you know, more food for thought. Let's see who we got on here. Say hi to the people, and we'll talk about Kyle O'Gara. Bada bing, bada boom. Who we looking at today? We're looking at James Shop. What's up, my man? How you doing? We got Meggie Beck. Scotty, how you doing? Mlaki. Ken, how you doing? Yeah. What's bad for your brain? That's the whole point of this. 22 Salali, how you doing? D. Sharon. Toggy. Steven Appleblue, how you doing, my friend? Thanks for hopping on. Sorry if I'm a little tired today. It's been a long day. STT13454, how you doing? Little Big Planet Forever. It's a cute name. Vixen Barbie, what's going on? I'm the ultimate despair. How you doing? Vegas Bad. No, that's right, it's not. Jen from outer space. What's going on, girl? Out of this world, apparently. Bromari13. Holly, what's up, girl? How you doing? Vegas Baby. Jen from outer space. We said hi. Outback baby boy. Itch behind. You guys have a fantastic rest of your night. If you don't want to stick around for the rest of it, we're going to talk about so much. So, it was, I don't know, Kyle. I don't know. It was what? A couple of years ago now. More than a year at least. You left us. Not to bring down the mood. You know, you enjoyed your life. You went early, and that's, you know, there's no words to say how heartbreaking that really is, right? Obviously, we all loved you, and we always had a great time. But if anything, you know, we have to learn from these terrible times. You know, if you don't take anything from that, you know, they went for no reason. There was no benefit to anybody else's life. You know, with death always comes the spawning of some new form of life and maybe some new beneficial knowledge that can improve someone's life at the very least, or something like that. And you know, you're out partying and you're having a good night one night, one dip in a bag, and it's fentanyl, and that's that. You know, so you know, I would never touch any sort of white powder or anything like that, unless I knew it was like citrulline malate or alpha GPC or something. You know, but no, in all seriousness, man, we had some fun times. You were at my parties. You know, you're always a party animal. Like I said, living it up and delivering pizza. You're working in the pizzeria. You'll never even see this, but I don't know. I feel like I want to talk about you today, and like I'm with you in some way, you know, at least. But being your birthday, so happy birthday! It would have been birthday. But I remember you walking to the oven in the pizzeria, like always pulling your pants up. Every time your pants would be falling down, and you always had to huck them up just to get there. I don't know why they were so loose, man. You could just wear a belt. Even like a shoelace would have been good, you know. It's like not bulky belt. Those of you out there that hate belts, maybe try a really long shoelace. Works pretty great. Nobody ever sees it if your shirt's untucked, so bada bing, bada boom. But we're remembering you today, Kyle. This one's absolutely, obviously for you. Happy birthday. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much. Say rest of your day because it's now a new day. We'll do another When Wellness because we do every single day. If you have any requests, by the way, guys, please send me a message. I'd be happy to talk about something. If you have my number, shoot me a text, even better. We get a lot of messages on When Wellness. It's hard to keep up with sometimes, but we do our best. So, if we don't answer you right away, please don't take it personally. And we want to talk about topics that are going to actually have an impact on someone's health and someone's life, and something that you've always been interested in and maybe haven't had time to do the research, So we do it for you because we're happy to learn. We love to learn. And, we'll give you whatever we had in the brain already on the topic. So enjoy the rest of this day. Happy When Wellness. We'll see you tomorrow. Today. Okay.